Welcome everyone. Today in this video we'll be discussing about the chapter the fundamental unit of life, that is cell. Now this video is going to be an introduction to the cell. On next video we'll be discussing more in details. The cell is called the fundamental unit of life. Now why it is called fundamental? Because it is the structural and functional unit of every living organism, whether it is plant or animal. Now you must be wondering why it is called structural and functional unit of life. Let me explain with some example. Suppose when we build our houses or building, what we need? We need some bricks, rods, etc. That means with these materials we build our houses and buildings. In the same way, our body structure, that means living organisms body structure is made up with these tiny cells. That is why they are called structural unit. Now functional unit. Now whatever functions living organisms possess, suppose excretion, respiration, digestion, movement, reproduction, whatever function it is, every function is done by these tiny cells. That is why it is called functional unit of life, and together they are called fundamental unit. The fundamental means most important. Now there are varieties of living organisms present in our earth. Now depending upon these varieties, the organisms are divided into two categories. The first one is unicellular organism and the second one is multicellular organism. The word uni means single, so those organisms which are made up with single cell, they are called unicellular. The second one is multicellular. Now multi means more than one, that means so many. So those organisms which are made with so many cells, that means more than one cell, they are called multicellular organisms. The next thing we'll be looking into the discovery of cell. In 1665, a British scientist named Robert Hooke took some cork of tree and he researched under his self-developed microscope. He found that the cork resembled the structure of honeycomb. Then he named them cells. The Latin meaning of cell is little room. Later in 1674, a Dutch scientist named Anton von Leeuwenhoek discovered that free living cells are found in pond water also. Later he discovered the sperm cells of humans, dogs, rabbits, etc. Then in 1831, a Scottish scientist named Robert Brown discovered that a material is present inside the cell and he named the material as nucleus. Then year after year, other scientists discovered all the other materials present inside the cell. We call these materials basically cell organelles. That means inside the cell, the materials which are present, we call them cell organelles. Then in 1838 and 1839, two German scientists named Schleiden and Schwann asserted that all the animals and plants are made up of cells, and they proposed the famous cell theory, which says that all organisms are composed of cells and cell products, that means cell organelles. Then all metabolic reactions takes place inside the cells, and all cells arise from pre-existing cells only. That means cell cannot be made up by their own, they are derived from the pre-existing cell. Then every organism starts as a single cell. Later they could be developed into multicellular organism. Now we have two important types of cells, that are prokaryotic cells and eukaryotic cells. Now all the living organisms present on the earth can be classified into two types. The first one is non-cellular organism, that means those organisms which do not contain any single cell in their body. For an example, viruses. And the second type is cellular organisms, that means those organisms which are made up of cells. It could be single cell or multiple of cells. The cellular organisms are further divided into two main types. The first type is prokaryotes. Now if we break down the word prokaryote, we'll get pro and karyote or karyon. Now these words are basically Greek words. The word pro means primitive or underdeveloped, and karyote or karyon means nut, and here in biology it means nucleus. So you can say that those organisms having primitive and underdeveloped or incomplete nucleus are called prokaryotes. The second type is eukaryotes. Now again, if you break down the word eukaryote, we'll get eu and karyote. Now the word eu basically means true or genuine. That means developed and advanced, and karyote means nucleus. So we can say that those organisms having developed and advanced nucleus are called eukaryotes. So the main difference between these two types of cells is that in prokaryotic cell, nucleus is absent. That means nuclear region is not surrounded by nuclear membrane. On the other hand, in eukaryotic cell, nucleus is present. That means nuclear material is surrounded by nuclear membrane. Now, division of labor. Here the word labor basically means different metabolic functions. Now this means that different parts of human body perform different functions. For an example, human body has heart to pump blood, then we have stomach to digest food, then our skeleton muscles or skeletal systems helps us in movement and locomotion and so on. That means for each and every different functions we have different organs and organ system. So this is called division of labor. That means dividing the task, dividing the functions to specific organ system. Then we have cell shape. Now our body contains varieties of cells and the shape of these cells differ from each other. For an example, let's talk about nerve cells. Now the function of nerve cell is to transport the message from sense organs to brain, and again sending the command from brain to each and every muscles. That means they work from our head to toe in our whole body, and that is why the shape of nerve cells are very elongated, very lengthy. For another example, muscle cells. Now the function of muscles is basically to protect our internal organs, our skeletal systems, bones, etc. And that is why the shape of muscle cell is spindle shaped, and they are very rigid, they are very flattened. Just they can give a hard outer cover to our body and they can protect our internal organs. So it means varieties of cells have different shapes, and thus they may have diversion in their shapes such as polyhedral, spherical, spindle shaped, elongated, branched, discoidal, etc. Now cell size. Just like cell shape, the sizes of cell also differ from each other. For an example, we can see ostrich egg. Now ostrich egg is also a cell itself. We can see with our naked eye. It could be up to 18 centimeter. And among plants, there is a cell called ovule of cycas plant. You can also see this with our naked eye. But most of the cells are microscopic. That means we need microscopes to see this. Some nerve cells of human beings could be up to 1 meter long. In the same way, a marine algae called Acetabularia could be extended up to 10 centimeter. So it means the sizes of cell also differ from each other. Some could be very microscopic, very small, measuring by micrometer, and some could be large, measuring by centimeter also. So this is the end of the video. This video was a bit of introduction to the cell, that means the fundamental unit of life. On next video we'll be discussing about the structure of cell and various organelles present inside the cell. Till then, stay home, stay safe.